This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and this is Games of the Week, mate. Hello, welcome back. How you doing?
How's it, man? I did a thankless task again. I picked a Southern Hemisphere, but only if they're in the Rugby Championship team of the 2 test series. I've called the Testicles for the Roar. I don't know if you saw it, but it was actually fun. Now, there were 2 positions, and this might tail into our conversation, that were really difficult, which was fly off and hooker.
It's going to now that you've brought it up.
In every other position, it was kind of like, there was some magnificent performances by your friend Bobby V, for example. But whenever you do that, you just get the same coyotes gnawing at your bones.
How did you pick him, mate? Did you even watch that series?
He's crap. My guy's better.
Yeah, standard. Who did you pick in those contentious decisions? Not because I certainly haven't read the article yet.
Well, number 10, I was tempted to go with Frawley because he was born in Sydney. Kind of end around my own rules.
Yeah,
I did some shifting. So Peter Stefatory had a magnificent,
good
2 brace of tests. So I pushed him over there and pushed Bobby V, your guy, at 8, even though I think he played 6 and 8.
He did play 6 and 8.
Pablo Matera at the open side, nipping Fraser McWright. And just because if you actually
you put him in open side.
Yeah,
I reckon he played 6 and 8 as well.
Yeah, he played amazing 7 against France, and he had 15 carries and 15 passes and 15 tackles. It's some sort of NBA stat. He was absolutely everywhere. And if you remember,
triple double.
Pablo Matera was one of the foreign players of the year, and I think he missed the World Cup, but he is a monster when he is in the mood.
It's a triple double. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, fair enough. You've no doubt seen my rundown on RugbyPass as well. Since
it was good. Yeah,
flog our it was a little look back on who did what and where they were on the field when Filippo Dangunu's first try evolved. And it was looking back at it, and I looked back at it a couple of times. The work, particularly of Fraser McWright and especially Jeremy Williams, was incredible. And it just in that moment, that's what work rate meant to Joe Schmidt. So it was really interesting to look at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of discussion around one of my favorite pods to listen to, and you have to pay for it, but it's Rugby Weekly Extra, and it's the Irish, and they talk a lot about this idea. And I think Joe Schmidt maybe have been the one who brought that to their idea of test coaches that routinely pick players that you go, huh, really? I didn't know that guy was in running. So a Jeremy Williams type pick.
Good idea.
They have Frawley, Osborne at 15. And there's something about whether they already knew it or they were just lucky or they know how to work with someone, but it works out. More often than not, Joe Schmidt has been good at picking the CJ Stander that people go, I don't think he's that good. He's not big enough. And then he turns out to be, a legend. So
did he first pick James Lowe in the Ireland team?
He did. And also at some points there were people out of form like Peter O'Mahony and then there was a resurrection either with Schmidt and Farrell at the time working together. So there's something that, people just, we've always talked about how Tess is different, but Jeremy Williams, a year ago, I wouldn't have had in the conversation, and look at him
6
now.
6 weeks ago, I wouldn't have had him in the conversation.
Which is why I will still continue to say that Tane Edmed is the great loss of our generation.
Confirmed signing for North Harbour in the MPC this week. It's a good move. And there's a handful of Australian players going. Anyway, do go back and find episode 23 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby podcast with Charlie Morgan. That was also a really enjoyable look back on the 3 big ticket July series in New Zealand, Australia, and South Africa. So go and check out. And it's the Test Rugby edition of our end of week show once again. We'll have a look at. There's still some really good games coming up this weekend, so we will get into that. But first of all, I need to acknowledge a lovely little package arrived at my house this week, and my wife is not pleased with you because she feels like you're enabling my jersey collection obsession.
Yeah.
So, but sincerely, thank you, mate. The wonderful Sharks jersey, perhaps the second best thing to come out of Kings Park after York Car Park last weekend.
Shout out to Mike Leslie, Chief Branding Officer for the Sharks, who is the ultimate.
Lots of signatures. Look at it, all the way down my stomach.
You have like guys like Ibn Etzebeth, Bongimanambi on your tummy.
And I like this bit on the sleeve.
I always thought that it's kind of bad though that the Sharks are all in black in a hot, humid environment.
Durban, yeah.
Just sweating them balls off.
Yeah, I used to think of it the same about Western Force playing in black jerseys in Perth. Is that the smartest study? Anyway, let's get into some games of the week this weekend, mate. There is some interesting games, and it's a long list. Again, starts on Friday with Tonga hosting Spain in Nuku'alofa. Then in Brisbane, Queensland play their first tour game in, I think, 30 years at home when they host Wales at Suncorp Stadium. In San Diego on Friday night, the New Zealand All Blacks will host the Flying Fijians, and then Paraguay host Belgium in Luque. On Saturday, it's Australia, Georgia in Sydney, South Africa, Portugal in Bloemfontein, Brazil v Hong Kong, Sao Paulo, Uruguay hosting Argentina in Punta del Este, Chile hosting Scotland in Santiago, Japan hosting Italy in Sapporo. And there's some cracking games in there. I'm genuinely looking forward to Queensland Wales tomorrow night. I think that could be a really entertaining game of rugby.
I'm looking forward to that, but I wish that it was Wales versus New South Wales, because then the Warsaw boys could be like, we're newer and southerner than you.
By the same token, are you disappointed that there's not more rugby played in the Netherlands, so that it could be Zealand v New Zealand?
Nice, well done. I cannot think of anyone else. Sorry. No,
that's as good as York. And anyway, we're getting ourselves sidetracked. I think Wales get another game, and we actually heard Warren Gatland and his team talking post-match last week that they actually need this extra game on tour to get more game time into this very, very young Welsh group of theirs. So, that'll be good. But I think for Queensland, the big headlines is certainly the 3 or 4 ex-Rebels, Melbourne Rebels on their bench. Matt Gibbon, Josh Canham, Lockie Anderson. Mason Gordon hasn't actually signed with Queensland, but he's playing club rugby in Queensland, so he's snuck onto the bench. So there's still a deal being done there, no doubt.
Look, there's plenty in these squads to work out. I had a looked over the rugby championship teams, all 4 who played against 4 of the 6 nations, and I found some surprising things. I would imagine the coaches want to use this week against, even if it's a Portugal or Georgia, and maybe mostly because of that. The rugby championship teams won the scrum over the 6 nations, which was somewhat surprising.
Yes.
But in a way, it's also a very weak era for Welsh scrumming, for example. So the Georgian scrum should be a proper test. I would imagine that a scrum coach for the Wallabies is going, yes, this is good. I want another week. I want to see the angles. I want to see what our 8 does. I want to see how we dig in. I want to see our timing, the timing of the second shove. And so, is it just a one-off, or are we that good? And I think on that, I think other thing is lineouts were spectacularly bad for the World Rugby Championship teams. They were stolen at will. So you'd imagine the All Blacks are going to go, look, there's a certain thing of calling and lifting and shape that doesn't really matter who we're lifting in the air. We've got to get All Black lineouts working right, or we're not going to go anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Scott Robertson needs to stand at training and go, you blokes need to get this right, or I'm calling Whitelock again.
It was absurd.
Play that threat.
At some point, it felt like Cody Taylor and Maro Itoje were friends or something. It's like, let me give it to you.
No, good. Wales, interestingly, just going back to that, have named Sam Costello at 10. They've Cameron Winnett still at fullback. Rio Dyer on one wing. Nick Tompkins is back at 13. Regan Grace is the rugby league convert on the other wing, which is interesting. And Tane Plumtree goes to 7, which I think completes his set of back row jerseys for this tour. I'm sure he played 6 and 8 in the first 2 tests. So
everything ties back to the Sharks this week. Plumtree, there you go.
There you go. Exactly right. Sharks. New Zealand playing Fiji in San Diego at the
what a vibe, man.
Snap. It's the same stadium that the Legion play at, isn't it?
True. And there's a huge Fijian community in San Diego.
Is there? Yeah, right.
And San Diego is so easy to get to for all the Kiwis that live in California, which is 28 million people. So you would imagine that's packed, and imagine it's a vibe. I actually think that's one of the matches of the weekend for me. That might be the game of the week for me.
It could be. It could be an absolute ripper. Plenty of changes for the All Blacks.
And you would think that it's the banana skin in a way, because Fiji would so love to pull something off there. It would just be historic. and it's a neutral venue, and I feel like they might adapt to
Fiji,
sort of the California vibe.
Fiji fronted up and beat Georgia 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So, stranger things have happened. On Saturday, as I mentioned, the Wallabies hosting Georgia in Sydney, and that is going to be intriguing because I think we all fall into stereotype about Georgia in much the same way that we fall into stereotype about Japan. They go, they're a high octane, very athletic, but not very physical game, which is no longer the case. Georgia, yes, have a very strong set piece, but they have some very, very dangerous outside backs, and they nearly beat Australia at the World Cup last year, and it wasn't through set piece.
Yeah, and David Nashvili, who's plays for Lyon in the top 14, is 23 or so. He could be one of the best. His career might be one of those best tier 2 careers ever. It elevates Georgia to a different level. There's plenty of danger there. I would imagine also that Joe Schmidt has become irritated by all these memes that go out and say Australia has the longest winning streak of tier 1 nations. I can just imagine him being annoyed by that and saying, pay attention to this game.
I did love that stat that the top 10 currently top 10 ranked, and of the 10, Australia was the only one to have won their last 3.
I could see Joe being irked by that and saying,
we're number 1.
Yeah, stop it. We just beat someone who's not even in the top 10 anymore. Let's calm down. Yeah, interestingly enough, you said what on Twitter to the idea that you won against Wales and it didn't.
Yes,
you went down.
Yes, and we went down. And thank
Wales
you to everyone
dragged you down.
Thank you to everyone on Twitter who did point me in the direction of Italy's 15+ win over Fiji in Fiji. That's why they jumped so many places, and that's what pushed Australia down. So yeah, it did kind of make sense.
But on a real sense, though, it points out the fact that when you do play against a tier 2 team, or one that's sort of 10 places behind you, actually have to towel them. You have to muller them.
You do. You have to win well.
Or you lose ground in the World Cup picking or something. So I think none of these things are games off. None of these things are just holidays. These are all proper test matches.
Yep.
Inside these teams, there's 4 or 5 guys who would be able to start on a tier 1 team. So you can never take your mind off. And look at the try that the Wallabies did score. That try could be scored against you. So
absolutely.
You don't want to be in that story.
I like that it's been pointed out, and I like that Schmidt replayed Ben Donaldson's try against Georgia at the World Cup last year, and that was a turning point in that game. And it came from Taniela Tupou intercept, but what Schmidt was replaying was the fact that Georgia had made a line break, and had the pass stuck, they score at the other end. True. So it was your classic 14-point turnaround, and it was a massive turning point in the Wallabies campaign, because if they ever lost that game, then they might have been out, well and truly before they played Fiji. There's some interesting selections. I like that he's given Isaac Kalia a start at loose head. I know Mike Cron's got massive reps on him. I'm glad to see Nick Frost back, and I'll be keen to see how he and Angus Blythe work. I think it's interesting that Rob Valentini and Fraser McRae are there again. And then, I'll be interested, like Darby Lancaster is another guy who I thought had a pretty decent Super Rugby season, but I didn't sort of have him penciled in for Test Rugby anytime soon. So, we see how he goes as well.
Yeah, we talked about this topic of how Test coaches are finding, diamonds in the rough. And there's some coaches like Andy Farrell, Joe Schmidt, you could say Rassi Erasmus too, really good at picking someone that the people say, and then a year later, everyone says, oh no, I knew he was good. I was always on him. But that's not true. They actually are able to find, in contrast with say France and New Zealand, that seem to pick, the ones that are more obvious. Like Ian Foster would have been that kind of guy. So it's interesting. Joe, I think, is showing his quality early on of saying, no, trust me. I see something.
I know what I'm doing here.
The issue is it just that they see something that, hasn't been unearthed by the club system or the club game plan, or in camp, is there something that they're finding in that person when they're around other really top level people? Some people respond to being iron sharpens iron. Some people kind of fade away and don't like it. So I think Joe's really smart to use this test and this period, this 3 or 4 game thing.
It's a good learning period. Yeah, exactly.
Who are you? Like, are you someone who rises to the occasion, or do you shrink?
Yep. No, really good point. As we get to South Africa and Portugal, Harry, please welcome to Games of the Week, Bernard
Dramatic entrance.
Hello, mate. Welcome.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to Paris on Sunday for the Olympics. So I'm in charge. I'm leading our Equine team. So last minute logistics, and I don't know if you're at the World Cup, but the Frenchies leave things late. So hence I'm late. But we're all good. All good.
You shocking name dropper, Bernard Jackman.
No. I'm just giving my excuses.
No, fair enough.
The first equine excuse we've ever had.
Yeah, good.
And also, I really think that the French even left like the idea of having food and drink until the last minute.
It was shocking, wasn't it? But yeah,
it feels like they may not have learnt that lesson.
No, but they'll come to each event and they'll support like they did in rugby, and it'll be a phenomenal event. Like the Equine is out in Versailles in the Palace. Like, what a setting! So it's gonna be good games, I think. You know?
Is it show jumping, dressage? What is it?
Show jumping, dressage, and eventing. Yeah, all of that. And then I'm back for the Paralympics we have a para dressage team as well. So amazing athletes. So all go. So we start. I go Sunday and come back on the 7th, and then go back again. Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, very good.
Very good. Like we were just talking about something actually related to you. I was talking about it, but I lacked you in the conversation, and it might have to do in a way of like picking horse flesh. We were talking about how your comment on Rugby Weekly Extra, and I forget whether it was Gavin or Murray Kinsler was asking you this, and it was about the idea of test coaches identifying players that don't seem like they're on the top of the radar, but making them better, or they just saw that they were better. And then I think you said it was kind of a both thing for Andy Farrell. You know, Osborne at 15, Frawley coming out of kind of nowhere, even, past examples of James Lowe and Peter Omani lifting them. Yeah. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think like there's very good coaches and there's very good selectors. And I think Farrell saw something in Gibson Park. Like, Gibson Park wasn't first choice for Leinster when kind of Farrell said he's going to be the guy that we'll build a team around. And likewise, Osborne wasn't a natural selection. He hadn't played for Leinster. Started for Leinster fullback this year. Did really well over 2 tests. Frawley isn't the first choice. Probably wasn't the second choice 10 for Leinster this year. And yet he very clearly decided he's going to be the guy to back up Crowley. He's managed to get probably another 2 years out of Conor Murray, got another 2 years out of Johnny Sexton. Peter Manny, he's been able to get more out of him, obviously leadership roles. So I think Farrell is a very good selector. And going back to Joe Schmidt, obviously the Australian angle, Joe's a little bit different. Joe, I'm not saying Joe picked players consistently to play for him with Ireland that maybe you wouldn't have thought had all the tools to be international rugby players, but they fitted his system. They have fitted his system really well. So the likes of Dave Carney, Andrew Trimble became key players for him because of their work under the high ball, etc. So it just depends on, and I think Joe is someone who identifies players who can play his system really well. Farrell the same, but I think Farrell's a little bit more around character, and have they got that mentality to step up? So like I know if he thinks you have character, he'll forgive you for not having certain physical attributes or technical attributes. He'll just back you that under pressure you will deliver, which is an interesting one for him. And it's kind of part of his persona as well, and part of what he demands of his players. And I think that's why he was so frustrated after the first test, whereas a lot of Irish fans were talking about the TMO and this, that, and the other. He was really disappointed with how his team hadn't pitched in terms of physicality and hadn't pitched in terms of taking the game to the box, and that really frustrated him. And that's what he hammered all week, and we got a reaction, which is brilliant.
Yeah. So when you were watching that game, Bertrand, I was in Kings Park, and I was sure we had won. I was sure the Box had come back, and to come back from a comeback's hard sometimes, especially away from home. Up 5, it just felt like we had it. The clock was our friend.
Yeah.
Did you actually feel like they were going to come back on that grubber kick through or not?
No. I thought when Cian Healy got held up over the line, I thought that was it. Goal line drop out of South Africa. They're not going to get caught in the same 3-phase play that they did in Pretoria and in it was a slight variation on it in Durban, but they weren't going to get caught in that again. And then Frawley hits 3 points. You know what I mean? And you're going, is that enough?
From 45 meters on the angle.
Yeah, is that enough? And are we going to get another chance? And then obviously we have a crossfield kick that goes dead. And you say we're not going to get another chance. And then we had a scrum. I mean, if you're at a box and you have field position with 2 minutes to go, you know, and given you're the box, which, like, for me, when I think about the box, I think about they win close games, like quarterfinal, semi-final, final, 1 point, never looked panicky, always looked in control, and Ireland have to go 70 meters. And the reality is as well, I mean, Ireland were never going to go 70 meters ball in hand, right? Because we just don't have the speed, and we struggled to break down that defense. So, I mean, the grubber kick. First of all, it was a very nice strike play to get Frawley outside Creel, but then he kicks a grubber kick that's probably for a left footer. He kicks on his right foot, and I would say when he kicked that ball, best case scenario is hoping that it goes out. I mean, maybe win the line out on an opposition throw. Still
line out, yeah.
Which was unlikely, really. But and then the game was over. South Africa, but like the fact that the ball kicks up, the chase is good, and South Africa carry it over, gives you one more chance. And then, I mean, you know, in fairness, I really admired how he went for 2 drop goals in Twickenham.
Yes.
Okay, people said he missed them. He did miss them, but he wanted that responsibility, and you know, he would never. I'm sure it was a very difficult period for him after that, and he probably never dreamt he would get another chance, particularly so quickly in a test match.
So soon
to win it, and to kick 2, and the organisation for that. And look at the South Africans feel there was a trip on Kobe, but like the actual block that Ireland put in place. No, but the block they put in place.
No one seriously thinks that, Brett. Don't worry.
I know. But you look
very
at my
clearly slipped over.
Look at my Twitter or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
right.
The staggered approach. If Bealham had been on the same level as Doris, but then once he got past, he was gone onto the toe. But because they were staggered, he had to weave. And I just
weave through. Yeah.
Even that level of detail. Late in the game with subs on the pitch, I think Farrell would be really pleased about that, because they just they had the plan, they had the character, but also they had the clarity around how they can actually help Frawley have a shot at it. So very, very, very pleasing for Ireland. Look, if Ireland played South Africa next week, would I back Ireland? No, but I still think South Africa are ahead of us. But that win for us is massive. I think it means this year, look, it's still a failure. World Cup is a failure. But to win a Six Nations and to beat the world champions away from home is a big statement by this team, I think.
It's so huge. When I was just panning through headlines and writing and kind of the vibe, I mean, I saw so many people say it made the entire year, or it made my summer. It redeemed in some ways. It was the biggest. I think people say it was the biggest win, maybe bigger even than the New Zealand series, because New Zealand turned out to be not as good as we thought they were. Yeah,
100%.
Charlie Morgan on earlier in the week, Bernard talked about Frawley's drop goals, and he just said, he mentioned the Champions League final, the Champions Cup final, and said much the same thing. The confidence, and he even mentioned that grubber kick you talked about, the confidence to go back there, but the absolute balls of the guy to forget about what happened last time in a high pressure moment, to do that twice. That's career making.
When he went early too, Birch, he didn't wait. He didn't do that thing where you go, let's get a little bit earlier. No, he just went.
Go closer. No, I'll kick it from 45.
And because he went early, it was only really Colby who was trying to get to him. I mean, if he had played another phase, he would have had shooters coming from both sides. So it was like that. If Ronan O'Gara or Johnny Sexton did that, or Dan Carter or any of the, Johnny Wilkinson, we will be raving about it. But for a guy who doesn't play 10, regularly, for a guy who hasn't had those big moments in his career, it's a massive, massive moment for him. And I think it's a moment that he can build his career on. And I think the big challenge now is to come back to Leinster and be 10 and play 10, because look, he can play fullback, he can play centre, but the reality is he's not going to oust Keenan. He's not going to oust Gary Ringrose, Bundy Aki, Robbie Henshaw. He may not oust Jack Crowley, because I think he had a very good tour as well. But he has a far better chance of playing 10 for Ireland than he has playing, as in starting, than he has other positions.
He'll be good for the 22 jersey. He's going to cover 10 well. He's going to cover 15 well.
And that's been the problem. Brett, that's been a problem, and that's why Leinster have been slow to play him at 10, because especially because Leinster this year went 6-2 the odd time. He's very valuable on the bench as that cover, but like at this stage of his career, he needs to want more. He needs to want more. He wants to start, and I think Leinster have a better chance of winning trophies with him at 10 than him on the bench.
Yeah. So after I destroyed several chairs and the insides of my room, I kind of reflected.
But he rang me from Durban at lunchtime on his Sunday, and he was all mopey as well. Don't like losing.
That's a horrible. It's the best way to win and a horrible way to lose.
I was like, mate, welcome to my world for the last 5 years.
Look at he's had enough wins. He can.
Exactly.
But my reflection, Birch, was that adaptation, both inside the match and between the two matches, was superior for Ireland. The escorts were much better in the second test, so Osborne could catch freely and launch. The number of rucks set, the places where they played, the start, the first 40 minutes,
fast start.
and selections. So you just had people that just really fit. Moving ring rows to 13 afforded. I don't know if Aki was really hurt or not, but I just think Henshaw played better at 12 than he did, containing De Allende. Everything seemed to fit, whereas Rossi kind of said, I don't need to do anything. Quagga was really a failure experiment against Doris, but I'll put him in there again. Was that hubris? Was that just...
No, I think that's fair. Look, I think it's always easier to learn if you lost.
Yeah.
Yes. No, but... And Ireland, like, in fairness, if you're the box, right? If I was Razzie, and I was reviewing that game in Pretoria, I'd be kind of going, how do we not win this game by 20 points? You know what I mean? Like we missed shots at the goal. We were a little bit loose in the 22. Our attacking game, which we're evolving, was really successful. We don't need to, and look at the selection. He didn't change many. He didn't change. It was a very experienced team. And they probably felt, okay, we don't have altitude, but we've literally probably battered him so much. There's injuries. Dan Sheehan is gone, but Casey's gone, etc. We can do it again. So I don't think you need to evolve when you're winning like that as much as you do if you don't. And then obviously I think Ireland had the whole, what are we as a group of men? What are we as a team? Why have we lied down there? Why haven't we played our game? Why haven't we shown that we're brave, etc. So from a mindset point of view, Ireland had it all to prove, whereas the box didn't. And also, I think Farrell was the biggest. The winning of the game was he went to his bench earlier than usual, and they performed. Whereas it's been a big weakness for us. And look, I'm not sure. I still think the box have a better bench than Ireland, but I think that's a massive win for us. Is that he was able to bring on Caelan Blade. He was able to bring on, as you mentioned, Frawley. He was able to bring on O'Mahony off the bench, Finney Beelum, Rob Herring, etc. Cian Healy came on earlier than normal and did well. And that's huge for us. So I can see, look, the reality is between the top, look, we saw at the World Cup, South Africa barely beat England. France could have won the World Cup. Ireland could have won the World Cup. New Zealand could have won the World Cup. England could have won the World Cup. Between those top 5 teams in the world, there's literally a kick of the ball. You know what I mean? And it's one play, it's one mistake, it's one refereeing decision that will decide who wins. Now the box has just been very good at making sure that they nail all those. But and in fairness, unfortunately, at the moment there's a little bit of a gap. I think to Argentina, to Australia, to Scotland, etc. But between those top 5 teams, it's very little between them, and we saw that in this 2-test series. It could be 2-0 to South Africa, it could be 2-0 to Ireland, but I think a draw is probably a fair result.
Rassi will get a good look at new players this weekend to face Portugal in Bloom. Do you think that loss to Ireland actually forces him to have another think about things and think, all right, maybe we actually need to think about things before we play New Zealand again?
Yeah, look, I don't know. I don't think the lost Ireland will massively change things, but I do think realistically the squad that played Ireland 2 tests, some of them won't make it to next World Cup. That's the reality of it. I mean, how many how many teams get 4 cycles out of the same players. It's very rare. Some of them obviously will, but he has to be looking for new talent. And I mean, you know, how lucky is he? I mean, there's so much talent in South African rugby. Obviously, a lot of it's abroad, but every year there's new kids coming through. And I think the ideal game is Portugal. You know what I mean? I'd like Ireland are tired, but and they need a rest. But like, ideally for Farrell, I would say another test against some of a tier 2 country to give the likes of Sam Prendergast a game, you know, see what he's made of. Like, we had some players who went on tour who didn't get game time, and that's the nature of the beast. But yeah, I think this game is ideal for Rassie, and there is talent in South African rugby that, if they get the opportunity, will really continue to push the main players, and maybe they'll respond, and some of them may not have it in the legs to go to another World Cup. And
that's exactly why Wales have tacked this game against Queensland on Friday night, exactly for that reason.
I've likened this era of rugby to tennis at top level. We had, you know, Nadal, Federer, and Djokovic all have distinct advantages against each other depending on the surface and the type. But they're clearly, you know, it's hard to separate them. Like, you look at their careers, there's just, I think Roger said it was like he'd won, you know, 17 more points than Djokovic. It's that close, you know.
It's incredible.
So you look at rugby and you say that just throw a blanket over those 5 teams. Exceptionally brutally physical, all 5 of those teams. You look at Ireland, South Africa, the style of play in those tests for the last 5 times have been off the charts. Very clean. I'm not saying anything about dirty, but just incredibly brutal on the bodies. Broken legs, you know, people just dropping like flies. Yeah. Is that what's required nowadays in rugby at the top level, to be in the top 1 or 2?
Yeah, I don't think you can run away from it. You can't. You can try and create a game plan that lessens that importance, and I think Ireland did that. I think over the 4 years with Farrell, you saw Ireland want to play high tempo ball movement. But the reality is, if you come up against a team who are keen to fight, and when I say fight, just to bring physicality, and that's not a Bok thing. I mean, the All Blacks will do it whenever they need to. Yes, you know, exactly. England are changing how they play, but it's very much, you have to match that power. France have power in abundance. So yeah, and I think that's the pleasing thing for Ireland is, I think when you look at it, okay, we struggled at times in Pretoria with the power game, but we managed to hang in there. You know, we didn't get blown away by that. And in the second test, I thought we actually probably maybe nearly matched the Boks a little bit at certain times. And we're starting to get a different profile of player, the likes of Doris, you know, Ryan Baird, Joe McCarthy bring physicality. You know, Robbie does as well. James Lowe does. So Osborne certainly does. So that is it's a basic requirement to win tier 1 test matches, is you have to be able to match the arm wrestle, or win the arm wrestle, depends on how you're set up. So definitely, I think that this era that's the key thing, and I don't see rugby changing too much. They'll change the rules, but that necessity for physicality and power is always going to be pretty high.
Always going to be there.
Yeah,
and it's so big too. Ireland is big. Like, you know, obviously you take Sneijman out of it, but Ireland was man for man, taller, bigger. Take 9 and Sneijman out of it. Yeah. And so was that a goal? Do you think that was recruitment by Nusafora, by Schmidt, by Lancaster to get Ireland?
Yeah, look, we would be we probably don't have the genetics of some other teams, but there's a very good S&C programs like implemented with our high potential 15, 16-year-olds, you know, and some of that's linked to being driven by the provinces. There's a premium on athleticism now, and that's obviously starting to pay off. Whatever, I still think we have to be smart and we have to be technically very good, but we are starting to produce some athletes. I mean, there's a kid there. He didn't get to play in this test series. Cormac Izuchukwu plays for Ulster. He's an outstanding athlete. And there's a couple of under 20s coming through who are outstanding athletes. So we're starting to see better athletes coming through our pathway, and that's really important, and that's a big plus, because I think that was something that we lacked in the past.
Yeah, no doubt. Are you happy, Bernard, that you mentioned, you know, the so-called different tiers? It's taken 7 years from that San Francisco agreement of 2017, but are you pleased to see that agreement has now been put into place this weekend, and those we are seeing Georgia in Australia. We're seeing Portugal in South Africa. I can't imagine Japan and Italy would play too many times against each other outside of a World Cup, and maybe not even inside a World Cup. No,
absolutely. And a couple of my friends are involved in coaching Georgia at the moment, and this is like November. Obviously, they tend to get some good fixtures. But then when we're playing the Six Nations, they're playing the European equivalent of Six Nations, and they're probably too strong for that. So, a chance to get test matches of the quality they're getting now is really good, because in some ways, like every 4 years isn't enough, for World Cups. It's not enough. Definitely not. So I definitely think it's not perfect, and the calendar still needs a bit of work, and players are asked to play more games than ever before. But I do think these are the type of games that will close that gap between those tier 2 countries and tier 1 countries.
Yeah, no doubt. But it's been fantastic to have you back
on
guys. Games of the week. It's always great to have your insights and to even take another look back at what's been a pretty good collection of July tests.
Absolutely. I'm sorry again I was late.
I'll be watching for you in the opening ceremony. You're going to walk at Olympics?
No, we compete. Actually, would you believe? So the opening ceremony this year is very unique. It's each team are on a barge, and the barge goes up the Seine River. It's 3 hours, and it goes past all the beautiful, important historical sites. But there's only room for 28 on the barge, and I'm not important enough to get invited, so I'm going to pretend. I'm going to pretend I've given up my place to someone else. I might be a bit heavy for the barge as well. So
back on the banks looking after the horses.
Exactly. Well, I'll be watching it. But we actually compete the next day. So I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be an amazing games. It's the last games. Sorry, the next time it'll be in Europe will be at least 20 years. So we just need to take advantage of it.
Cool. Thanks.
It's great to have you back, mate. Thanks so much.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Great to have Bernard Jackman. He's literally from Irish. Literally from Irish Olympic duty to join us on Games of the Week. That was a treat.
Yeah, so good on Birch to ride on a horse and join our pod.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. We've been talking for a few weeks about the Major League Rugby conference semi-finals. They are this weekend. You see New England hosting Old Glory DC in the first Eastern Conference semi-final. In the Western Conference, it's Houston v Dallas. That's 1v4 in both those games.
That's the Dallas Jackals against the goddamn Houston Sabercats.
Sabercats
would be the biggest upset ever.
In Houston. That will be an interesting game. Sunday sees Nola Gold and Chicago in New Orleans. That's the Eastern Conference other semifinal, and the West is Seattle v San Diego, which is a repeat of the last round.
Interesting.
That
for
could be an interesting game.
Fans. There's a lot of Aussies on the pitch.
It could be a very interesting game, and we'll certainly take a look back at that next week. And there it is then, full time on another international edition of Games of the Week, a bit of a different edition of Games of the Week. But our service to Test Rugby is complete for another week, mate. I'm looking forward to this weekend's games.
Listen, are you happy about the Wallabies? Do you feel glee? Yeah. Do you feel contentment? Is there an optimism now? There
is a happy contentment that they are going in a decent direction. And we can see the Schmidt fingerprints. I don't mind that he's having a look at a few different players, but there's enough continuity from the teams that beat Wales coming through this. So the shape of his team is going to stay the same. So I'm content. I'm not going to sit here and say that this is going to be the team that will win the rugby championship. And I think anyone that's doing that is having you on. But it's a team that is progressing, and that's, I think, all that we could ask of Joe Schmidt in 2024.
If you're cautiously pessimistic, I'm happy, because that's, Brett doesn't get gleeful giddy.
Exactly. Look, if it means that I can keep wearing the colours after a win, then I'll keep doing that. But please tell us what you think at the 8-9 Combo on all the socials, or leave your thoughts in the comment section right here on the 8-9 YouTube channel. Tell Harry and I in socials in our usual places as well, at Harry Baldy Jones and at BMC Sport. Do like, follow, subscribe. Make sure you follow us on all your platforms on YouTube as well, and get everything as soon as it drops. And that includes Test Match Post-Mortem coming again on Saturday evening
Podmortem.
Yes, did fantastically well last weekend. So thanks to everyone who got around it. So yes, don't make sure you do get that. As I mentioned at the top, go and find episode 23 of the 8-9 Combo with Charlie Morgan wherever you pod. It really is a fantastic rugby chat. This is Games of the Week from the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones. And we'll be back in your ears on Saturday night with another test match post-mortem.
Come dressage with us.
Golden.